Hi, this is Caroline from The Happy Sensitive. I am here with a video on a topic I've been seeing coming up a lot online, emotional vampires. But I want to tackle this in a way you probably haven't heard anyone talk about this. Because what I notice is that a lot of things get kind of thrown together onto one big heap. And what I want to do is actually pull those things apart, because there's a lot of different problems and a lot of different things that are happening that go into when people talk about emotional vampires. Okay, so the first thing is this. There is a difference between how someone is behaving on the surface, consciously, what they know they're doing, what they're wanting to do, how they're trying to interact, what their intentions are, versus what this means for how they're behaving below the surface. And when I say below the surface, I also mean below the surface as in they don't realize this is the impact that they're having. This is very important because what it does is when you look at your own behavior and other people's behavior, you have to realize how we think we're interacting with people, what we think we're doing, what we're intending to do is not always what is happening below the surface. And so you can have someone who is one way superficially and who has a totally different impact energetically, as in how they're impacting other people with their energy. Now, often, this is where I want to start kind of unraveling things. Often when people talk about, oh, this person has an energetic impact on me, it's not necessarily about an energetic impact. What people often notice is I feel tired around this person, or I feel energized around this person. And there's a lot of stuff online now that's suggesting, okay, well, if you feel tired around someone, it's their fault, they're an energy vampire. And that is way, way, way too simplistic. That's like, if only life was that simple, right? So what is helpful is that a lot of articles will point out, okay, hey, certain behaviors are exhausting to be around, right? That's something that you need to recognize. If someone's behaving in a way that you find aggravating and stressful, then you're going to feel tired after a while being around this person. And it's good to set boundaries and say, I don't want to be around that. I don't want them to go on and on. I don't want to have to put up with this. I'll give you an example of this kind of behavior that on the surface, right? So on the surface, visible for everyone else, very, very annoying to be around, but not necessarily an emotional vampire. Okay, so I was in a shop and there was somebody, the owner of the shop was very talkative. And when I say very talkative, I mean nonstop, like chain smoking, but then with words. One sentence would end and the next one would start, and it just went on for, endlessly, basically. So this person had a whole crowd of people around him in the shop who were just listening. And maybe they were listening because they were interested, or maybe they were listening because they were waiting for an opportunity to ask a question. I don't know, right? Now, if you're around someone like that who's constantly blah, 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 and you are like politely waiting to ask something, you're going to feel exhausted and stressed and drained. But it doesn't mean that person is an energy vampire who's stealing your energy. What is happening is, like, as you're waiting your turn politely, what happens on the inside, you get frustrated, you get annoyed, you get angry, you get stressed, you get worried, like, I have to go somewhere. Like, when is this guy going to stop talking, right? You have all these emotions on the inside that don't feel good, that you're probably trying to kind of keep a lid on to be polite and to wait your turn. And so what happens that when you finally leave the shop, all this stuff has been piling up in your system. You feel exhausted, you feel bad, and then it's like, that guy was an emotional energy vampire. No. He was just really, really annoying. And so when I was in that shop, I was like, oh, this is one of those situations, right? So I saw this guy going on and on and on. I realized he's never going to pause. He's never going to look around to see if anybody needs anything. So I just butted in, okay? I just, mid-sentence, I said, excuse me, I need something. I have a question about this product that you have. I didn't wait for him to stop. So I left the shop feeling totally fine. I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't drained. I wasn't frustrated because I could see his behavior for what it was. And I was like, okay, he's going to keep talking unless someone interrupts him. So I will interrupt him, no problem. And the funny thing was, He even said at some point, he's like, yeah, people think I talk too much, but I think it's up to them to just say something if they want to say something. I don't remember like how exactly he wove that into the conversation, but he just actually blurted that out at some point as he was on his soapbox monologue. So, yes, this is not very social behavior of him. He's not really anticipating other people's needs, but it's not an energy drain. There's nothing psychic or mysterious going on. He's just annoying as long as you're not willing to interrupt him. Okay, so this is the first thing I want to pull out and distinguish here, is that a lot of the drain that people kind of name, and they're like, oh, it's an energy vampire, this person's so toxic to be around. Those people don't have to be toxic if you're willing to adjust your behavior. If you're willing to be a little bit rude or a little bit different than you normally are. This is really important, okay? So there are a lot of people you can get along with just fine as long as you're willing to say, okay, normally I don't want to interrupt anyone, but in this case, I have to, because otherwise I'll be standing here for the next 24 hours. So then you do it and you're fine. Okay, so that's the first thing with energy vampires. And you can have what people call energy vampires, emotional vampires. You can have people who are super annoying to deal with, but nothing mysterious, nothing psychic, nothing paranormal is happening at all. And then you can also have people who are very kind, very helpful, very gracious, very supportive, who somehow, even though they're kind and supportive and kind and gracious, and I don't hear people talking about this, they can be super kind, gracious, supportive, but actually beneath the surface, they're clinging to you like crazy, and they're super needy, and they're kind of slurping everything they can get from you. These are actually a much, say, problematic category for either if this is someone, because if this is someone you're dealing with, then what do you say to them? You're so kind and helpful, but I feel drained around you and I don't know why. You can't really bring that into a conversation. And for the people who have this going on, and I've actually talked to a lot of people recently who have this going on, they don't recognize it in themselves because they're like, I'm so kind, I'm always trying to help people, I'm always running around, taking care of everyone else. Why would I be draining to be around? I don't understand. But here is what energy vampirism or psychic vampirism, if you're talking about psychic stuff, if you're talking about actually life force energy, this is what it really is. It's when someone is not meeting their needs on the inside. So they're not getting their needs met themselves. They're not doing what they need to do to take care of their own emotions, their own stress levels, their boundaries, doing things they love. Somehow they end up either not noticing or sacrificing those things for a certain kind of ideal that they have of how they think they're supposed to live their life. And so what happens is the idea they have of how they should live their life does not match what is actually sustainable for them as a human being, in a physical body, in society. What they're trying to do is just not possible. So they get depleted. And when they don't realize that they're getting depleted, what they're going to do is they're going to keep doing what they've always been doing, sticking to their ideals, and their energy body, so beneath the surface, their psychic self will try to desperately get energy anywhere from anyone that they can find to stay alive. And I always explain it like this. It's like if you're a parent and you have a teenager, and you tell the teenager that they're not allowed to take a course that they really want to do. Like, for example, your teenager is really into photography. They love photography. They hate school, but they love photography, and they want to learn all about it, and they want to become a photographer. And the parent says, no, we think photography is dumb. It's a waste of time. You're not going to make any money. You should study economics and try really hard at school. At some point, if this teenager is even just a smidgen still alive on the inside, they're going to find a way to secretly do those photography courses. And if they do, that's a great thing, because they know what they need. they're going to try and do it anyway. And the parents can be like, oh no, our son or daughter doesn't do photography because we think it's stupid. We talked to them about it, and we just said no, don't waste your energy on that. Meanwhile, the teenager is like running out the back door, trying to get their hands on any cameras they can, joining any classes they can, learning from friends, going online, experimenting, So they're trying to do what they know they want to do anyway. And this is what happens with our energy body too. So if you, as the CEO of your own body, are not paying attention to what you really need, your energy body can develop these really, really, well, honestly, quite nasty tactics to try to stay alive and stay energized. And so what you can end up with is people who are on the surface, really annoying to be around, but energetically, everything's fine. There's nothing weird going on. They're not trying to get energy from you or anything. They're just annoying to be around. And on the other hand, you can have people who are very kind and supportive and always just going, beyond, what other people are doing in order to help others. But they're doing this and they don't realize how it's depleting them. And so they actually become draining to be around. And that's a really important distinction, and a distinction I really don't see anyone making. What people assume when they talk about energy vampires is they're assuming that the nasty surface behavior is paired with, oh, this person must be draining my energy. No, could be happening, but not necessarily happening at all. Yes, there are people who are very nasty on the surface, and they're also nasty below the surface. They exist. But a much bigger problem is when there's that split, when what's happening above the surface is very different from what's happening below the surface, because it's become this very polarized kind of experience, trying to make things happen that are just not realistic, trying to be too good, trying to be too kind, trying to be too nice, and it's just not sustainable. So what I found is that a lot of people who are wondering if they might be empaths, some of these people have this problem going on, because here's what happens. There's two ways to be very sensitive to the energy from other people. One is the empaths. The empaths stay put in their own body, and energy from other people comes at them. Okay? Now, this is usually how it feels, regardless of the mechanism that's happening beneath the surface. It feels like stuff's coming at you. But for empaths, this is truly happening. Stuff's coming at them. Right? And for them to heal and not have that happening requires subconscious work. Because even when they're staying put in their own body, even when they're really focused on what's happening inside of me, stuff still comes at them. Okay? But you also have people who are sensitive to energy, who are essentially clairsentient, not empaths, who get overwhelmed by energy from others because they're not staying put in their own body. They're always focused on what's going on around them. They're always paying attention to what's happening over there. What are they thinking? Oh, something's going wrong. I need to know what's going up, what's up with them. So their focus is always outwards, and they don't know what's happening inside their own body. Now, this sounds like, oh, you're super interested in what's going on with other people, and that's super kind and super nice. But what happens when this goes on for a long time is people who do this lose touch with what's happening inside their own body. They lose touch with their needs. They lose touch with their feelings. And as a result, their own needs are not getting met. They're so focused up here in how they should be living and what they should be doing. But inside, parts of them are pining. They're just like kind of not wasting away, but they're like, help, I need stuff, listen to me. And they're not paying attention because they're focused out there and not inside. So when that goes on, it can actually lead to a situation where you have someone who wants to help others, wants to be really kind, is really focused on supporting other people, is always running around making everyone else more important than them, and they can turn out to be really draining to be around. Why? Because while they're spending so much time trying to help and fix and heal and support everyone else, they're not taking care of their own needs. And so their own body gets depleted, gets exhausted, gets desperate, gets anxious, gets fearful, and is like, how are we going to survive? It's almost like the part of you that's in your body is like, hello, up there in the head, are you listening? We're down here, we're starving. And up in the head, it's like, nope, not listening to that. We're fine. So there's a disconnect. And it's nothing metaphysical. It's just habit. A habit of squashing feelings, a habit of not paying attention to your limits, a habit of not paying attention to what happens on the inside. And that habit really dovetails very nicely with kind of the societal ideal of being a helping hand for others, putting yourself last, being so supportive, being such a kind person. But when you do that to this extreme, where you're always out of your body, always focused somewhere else, what happens when you're outside of your body, focused on other people, you feel all their stuff, right? You get overwhelmed and you're like, oh my God, it's so overwhelming. But it really is because you're not focused in here. That's one. And the second, because you don't have the focus in here, you're not generating the energy you need from the outside, from the inside. You're not making the kind of choices that support you, that support what you need. So you get depleted. And then what happens is, as you're focused out there on all those other people, you start to connect, like desperately connect to them. That part of you in your body that's depleted is trying to desperately connect to all these people, trying to get their approval, trying to get them to like you, trying to get something from them. Because now you end up using your energy sensitivity as a way to try to get life force energy from other people, which unfortunately is very possible. It's very possible to break into someone's auric system and just rob the fridge, just raid the fridge. Be like, ooh, you've got some yummy energy, let me take that. And when people do this, they often don't realize, because as they're doing that, they also feel the emotions of the other person. It's like when you go into someone's house. You go into someone's house, you're like, I saw this nice, big, juicy cantaloupe, and I want to take it. And you go through the hallway to the kitchen, and then you see some photos, you see some stuff. You're affected by this person's energy because you're in their house. So people who end up in this situation, they feel affected by everyone's energy and overwhelmed by it. They're like, why is this happening to me? But they don't realize it's because they're not staying put. So you can see it's a lot more complicated than just those people who behave in an antisocial way on the surface are energy vampires. It's possible, like those people also exist. But a lot of times it's a lot more complicated, and it's actually the people who are trying really hard to please everyone else who end up, if they're very sensitive to energy and if they're not staying put in their own body, they're not connecting to themselves and their own feelings and needs, they end up being the ones who are draining to be around. Okay, so I wanted to get that out there as an idea, as a different reference frame, because I see this conversation so much now. This is such a popular term. Everyone's like worried about emotional vampires and energy vampires, but I don't see people actually making these distinctions and really understanding what it is.